It's so crazy. Imagine, like, we usually record videos together, and now we are trying to be together through like
It's
the
been a
screen.
year. Sorry for
Stop.
interrupting. I know it's gonna do that Zoom thing. I'm so sorry. You can finish talking.
Yeah, it's been a whole year apart, and now in a year, this is where we're at, and it's not just been this separation that's been happening in the year 2020.
This year. Wonderful.
It's been a lot. It's been a lot, but we are here, so we're grateful for that. Yeah, so today, wait, we should introduce ourselves.
Who are you,
Eh,
Miss?
Hello, everyone.
Mrs.? Do I know you?
Miss. Um, hello, everyone. My name is Natasha Mawera, and I am going into my final year of my finance degree at Swansea. And you,
Nice.
ma'am, who are you?
My name is Chido Ranganayi. I am also going into my final year, accounting and finance, though. Finally, like it's been a long ride.
One more year and we got this. Okay, cool. Chido Ranganayi.
Mm,
What are we talking about today? Why are we here? Why are we recording? Yeah.
great. Yeah, I think everything in 2020 has been an absolute shift. Is the word I will use. So, one of the things that has happened is just talk about racism and, how it affects different people in different, social stratas and different institutions as well. And so, we're just gonna have a conversation about our experiences, not just about race, but about our experience with uni and employability and just culture and all that jazz. Hopefully we can have other people to discuss this. We're well aware that we are both Black and not fully BAME. We are
Yeah.
not all
We're
things
not
in
the whole
one.
spectrum.
We are not. We cover just the B. um, yeah, so it would be really nice to just hear other people's perspectives about their own experiences and how they've been able to deal with that moving through university and looking forward as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
that's a great intro. Okay, so if we're gonna start it off, so we already know you're studying finance. You're
Accounting
Black.
and finance.
I mean, accounting and you're studying accounting and finance. You've been at Swansea. When did you join Swansea? Where were you coming from? Um, and when you were coming, what were your expectations starting? Okay, what is that?
Uh, just some jewelry. um,
Yeah,
so
so
I came to Swansea 2017. So I've been here for about, this will be going into my fourth year being in Swansea. Been here for
yeah.
2 years, going into my fourth year. Where I'm coming from, I'm from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, which is what this is. This is my country, in case you don't recognize it. You had another question?
Yes. What were you expecting when you came to Swansea as a
Yo,
BAME international? Were you thinking about race at all? I don't know. What were your expectations coming into university as a BAME international?
to be honest, I think I knew that there were going to be very few of us, BAME internationals. I knew there would be some BAME people because, that's how life works.
Mm.
I already knew a couple of friends that were here before me, so that made it a little bit helpful. But what was I expecting? To be honest, I don't think it was at the forefront of my mind in the sense of how it would impact my career, my employability, my education, my future. Um, I think I because of where I grew up, I had interactions with all, people from all different kinds of places. So I had that at the back of my mind where I was like, oh, hey, racism. Um, but I never really thought about it in terms of how will I experience this outside of, or sorry, inside of like my education and moving forward. Of course, socially, I was like, oh yeah, there are a couple
Mm.
of issues here and there in the world, but I never really thought about how it would impact like me personally. I don't think I thought about it.
Okay.
But did you think about it? Where did you come from?
I
All
hail
the questions
from,
you asked me.
Zimbabwe as well, which if people may have missed that is in Africa. Um, yeah, so I came from Zimbabwe as well. Fun little fact, Chido and I actually went to the same high school, did not plan to come to the same uni. Actually, I don't think we knew until a few months before we both left that we're coming to the same uni. Yeah, I think I knew I was definitely stepping into a different place. The reason why I picked Swansea was because, I always say this, our careers advisor would tell us, if you're going to pick somewhere that can be home for 4 years.
100%.
Um, so, as much as an international can, see the university and do open days, I, researched, spoke to the people, and I was like, well, people seem nice enough. It reminds me so much of Manicaland, which is where my mother comes from, the green, the rain. So I was like, this is somewhere I could call home. So I think I thought it was going to be homey. I knew obviously it was going to be different. I didn't speak Welsh. I didn't know whether I was going to
No,
understand
no
people.
Welsh, no Welsh at all. No.
No, not really, not really. None. And yeah, I think that's really what I was expecting. I was expecting someplace that was going to be homey. I knew there was going to be some, difference culturally. Did I think about race? I don't know whether I thought about race coming, but I definitely did think about it. I think it set in when I arrived, like, oh, you're here and this is now your reality. You're now a minority.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So when would you say you like first became aware of your race, or like racially aware is how I'll phrase it.
Yeah, racially aware. I think you and I probably had the same, it was probably the same time. It was when we walked into our first lecture, and our lecture theaters are huge. So it just kind of spans. So you walk in, it's your first day, getting into your first class in uni, you're hyped, and you walk in and you see a sea of a lot of people that don't look like you. um, and I think that was a shock because you come from Zimbabwe, a Black majority country. You walk in and like it is so normal to see other people like you, and then it's different. And even worse, you then kind of look around. Well, I don't know, want to say worse, but you look around and then you go, ooh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's when it stuck. Not necessarily that it was a negative experience, but I think that just visual representation of minority, that was the first thing of not many, a few. So yeah, I think that was my first. When was yours?
Yeah, the same one. 9 a.m. economics on a Monday morning. I think it was just very evident that moving forward, I would most likely, or just very often, be the only Black person in a room, or the only person of color in a room. And I think that was tough in terms of just having, to really have that settle down in your mind and say, okay, this is the kind of thing that I'm like, up against, and people may not understand me, and just, I think there were a lot of stereotypes just like moving in my mind, and it then became a battle of how do I make sure that I'm not perpetuating the stereotype of someone from Zimbabwe, someone from Africa, a woman. We talk about that intersectionality. There are different things that could be like, I don't want to say oppressing me, but different things that could be the reason as to why I don't necessarily obtain an opportunity, or something could happen. And so I think that was just a couple of the things running through my mind when I first realized, and I said, oh, okay, so this is where I'm at. This is what I have to deal with. I now have to be aware of even more aware of how I present myself.
Yeah. And could you touch a little bit more on what these stereotypes were that you're trying not to fit into? What are the stereotypes that you've heard that are assigned to a Black African woman that you were so afraid to perpetuate?
I think the biggest one was uneducated. So many people just don't expect Africans in general to be educated or professional,
Mm,
or eloquent or well spoken. And, you know, I am well aware that I am privileged to have been taught English for as many years as I did have. But I think, you know, walking into a room and I mean, it's not like everyone expected me to be uneducated, but
mm,
the thing over my shoulders was, oh, will they think that I'm uneducated? Will they think that I don't know how to interact with their culture? Um, will they expect me to, you know, crack jokes all the time? That's another thing about Africans is, you know, we're
yeah.
very fun-loving people, a lot of us, not everyone. Um, but, you know, that type of a stereotype, I think, were a few things that I was just thinking about. Um,
Mm,
yeah, yeah. Did you
yeah.
ever have any like experience any of your thoughts? Like, what were your thoughts when walking into situations where you were like, okay, I am the only Black or person of color person in this room?
Yeah, I think, and I think this allows us to also move swiftly into, you know, talking about employability. I think
Mm,
where I was most aware of the fact that I was Black and a woman was when I was in professional environments.
mm-hmm,
Um, so when you're around your peers, that doesn't matter as much because you come to uni knowing you're going to interact with people from different cultures. You know, I'm not coming from Zimbabwe to the UK to just get to know more Zimbabweans, right? I'm expecting to meet people from different backgrounds. You know, I'm expecting to meet people from Wales. I'm expecting to meet people from China, India, you know, all these different places, right? Even different
mm,
places in Africa, because you know, just because we're all from Africa doesn't mean we all know each other or know each other's cultures well. So, you know, within that group of just like the social side of things, I think I was fine being Black and a woman. I've always been proud of that. But I think, you know, say the first networking event, you know, one, you're coming from a different country, you know, maybe my personal experience is I hadn't really gone to any networking events.
mm,
Um, did I really understand what they were about or how they were meant to go down. I knew how to dress professionally because that is part of like our culture. You know, if someone's going to anything work, you know, dress professionally. So I knew that. But I think conduct, understanding culture, there's the business cards, you know, culture thing going on. You're like, can I not just come with a normal question and just not know something and just want you to explain? I think, you know, going through that and realizing even some of the people you were speaking to didn't look like you. So that's even demoralizing. You go to a networking event, you're trying to get, you know, move up professionally, and you go and there's no one like you to speak to.
mm,
And there's so many nuances. I think, you know, it's so important that people understand why it's so important to have that inclusion, to have representation. Because for me as a Black person, it's, and I'm sure it's the same with anyone from any minority background, it's hard to imagine yourself in a position where you're not represented because the first question is, will I be accepted?
yeah.
When you go to some of these networking events and you don't know other people, sometimes people tend to clump up into what is familiar to them.
Mm,
And what is familiar in a white majority country is you end up having all these clusters. And if you happen to be the only Black person, you're the one Black person who is moving around aimlessly and trying to force yourself into conversations you don't feel included in.
mm,
Um, and I think that's been hard, at least professionally throughout, even trying to find internships. I think I'm learning, but it is that thing where there's always a certain level of comfort when you see someone who looks like you, or at least someone who's willing to learn that you interact differently.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. It's a learning curve. I agree with you. I think moving into the spectrum of just trying to develop your career,
Mm,
it's I don't want to call it an obstacle because we're trying to be positive here, but
Yeah.
it's definitely like a resistance.
Mm.
Because just like you said, there's representation that's lacking. We don't have an eclectic array of people to represent all our diverse thoughts. And it's difficult when you're trying to go for a position or, trying to find out information about a role or about a career progression that you might want to pursue, and there's no one that looks like you, because we know that, especially in our field, in business, there are a lot of different struggles that you can face within the workplace just because you're working in corporate. But then there's an added layer because you're a woman, then there's an added layer because you're Black, and then even added layer because you're African. And so
Yeah.
I agree with you there. It's a definite learning curve. What are some of the things that you think you've learned along the way? Because I know that you have a job currently, which we're all grateful for, but how did you get there? Walk
Yeah.
me through your journey.
Gosh. Gonna try bring this all together because it's been a long journey. I think one, I would say, it wasn't easy because, and I think this is somewhere where we all need to forgive ourselves. If you don't get a job immediately, you are coming from a different place, especially as internationals. You're coming from a different place. You don't necessarily understand how applications are done, nor do you understand CV culture, all these different things, and even how interviews are done. The whole psychometric debacle. Um, there's so much that goes in, and it's not easy, and there's a lot of preparation. I would say preparation is key and research is king. It is it is one of those things that I've learned. I think those are the biggest lessons that I've learned. And I've learned that if I know I'm at a disadvantage, I can't change the people around me, and I can't change society around me to mold itself to my desires and to my comfortability level. So you do need to learn how people work. If networking is the name of the game, then you need to learn how to be a better networker. If that's not necessarily something that's part of your culture, you need to go to a networking event and allow yourself to go to some networking events where you just kind of watch other people. Go with someone else who's a great networker. Watch how they ask questions. If find questions that people are asking that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, and ask yourself, well, why are they able to ask these questions? And I'm not, because I was in rooms where people would stand up and they'd ask a question and I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting a job because I will not ask that kind of a question. But develop interest in whatever it is you're trying to pursue, I think is very important. Careers department, they're there for you for a reason. Even if it seems like, oh, they don't know something, they are so happy to research and find out for you. So they're so helpful. So let them know what's going on in your journey. Organizations like SEO London and Bright Network really have been my saving grace. One, because they've put me in organizations where there are other people who look like me, who are trying to go on this journey. And I think engaging with all these organizations that are actually outside of university are some of the things that have put me forward, because you have to realize that, Swansea is, it's only a part of the world, and it isn't all of it. And if you want to go somewhere, you have to be willing to, one, go into uncomfortable places, but two, be willing to learn. It's okay to go to networking events and not know anything, as long as you're learning something. Learn how to speak to people, and most importantly, prepare. You need to prepare, find out about companies, do intense research, do look at news articles, all the kind of stuff which is annoying. Psychometric tests, absolutely a pain, but the more you do them, the better it becomes. And I think that's maybe the initial obstacle of maybe actually applying. So, Chido, I know you've had a range of experience, right? I'm currently working in London. I've kind of gone through the corporate route, but you've taken a different route. We haven't always used the same organizations or even the same approach. So how have you navigated that space on your walk? In addition to preparation and research, what are some of the things that, I guess, advice-wise you would give a BAME person trying to look for a job or even just improve their employability skills? Yeah.
Yeah. I think you mentioned two of the most important ones, which is make use of the Employability Academy. Like they're there to help you literally in every single way possible, whether it's like CV workshops or going for mock interviews to practice before you go for a real job interview, mock assessments just in case you have one coming up, literally A to Z. And I think it's absolutely amazing. You mentioned organizations as well, which I think is super helpful, which then leads me to my important thing, which is mentorship. I think that has been honestly unparalleled. The advice that I've received from the people that have mentored me, I did a scheme with the School of Management, and that was incredibly helpful. Just some of the not even just work lessons, but life lessons I learned for personal development that then helps your own career development. One thing that I'm learning is you have to be proactive about your own personal development if you want to progress in any career. So that's helpful because it personalizes my own walk. So that's one thing that I've really benefited from is mentorship. I think another thing that I really benefit from, and you are a genuine testament to this because it is you, friendships. I think peers that are like-minded. I have friends that I know that I can go to if I want advice on my CV, on my cover letter, on different opportunities. Make sure that you have friends that you can send job opportunities to, and vice versa. Volunteering as well, I think, is another thing that has really helped me because it takes the focus away from how can I develop my career by getting a paid internship versus how can I help other people and, learning compassion, because that's an important thing to learn in your own journey as well. So I think volunteering has really helped me. Milestones. You never know who you can meet when you volunteer with someone, at a soup kitchen, or if you go on, a mental health march. There are many different kinds of people that you can meet there. So I think there are opportunities everywhere. Research was the other one, but that's a given. I think always being open to research. And I think one piece of advice that has changed my life is rather than applying for a job, rather than just applying for a specific role, you yourself need an agenda. You need to have a mission that defines your own career progression, that defines how you want your life to look. And once you have that mission, then you can find a plethora of different roles that can fit that job description that you want for your life, the thing that you want to achieve and make a difference about. So that has changed my life because rather than looking at just wealth management, for example, I'm interested in poverty alleviation. So rather than just looking at wealth management, I can look at, what other things affect poverty? Things like education, things like health, things like career development. And so, that opens up so many different sectors for me to apply to, whether it's in accounting and finance positions or whether I'm then going to change roles, who knows? But, sticking to an agenda is definitely life-changing.
Yeah, and I think especially you've touched on so many gems. I think it's also important to remember that it's a journey, right? Even for BAME people, I think there's so much that we go through, and it's not just BAME people, but anyone really. Things like imposter syndrome. Sometimes we really aren't qualified, for some of the roles we think we deserve, and we want to blame it on the color of our skin. I think one of the things that I'm striving to do is, I do know I'm Black. I do know there's discrimination because of, where I come from and what I look like and who I am. I am going to try my best. And I think this is, great advice that I don't think I'm there yet, but in my mind, we're working towards it. Working towards making sure that when it comes down to it and I get a rejection from a company, it's not because I wasn't prepared. It's not because I didn't do research. It's not because I don't have a genuine interest. Tick as many boxes so that there is very little, it's unfortunate to say, but if it's just going to be about your race, at least know that it was just about your race and not because you didn't put in effort. I think it's a balance to, you know, kind of create where it's don't give up simply because you're Black and you think you won't get in anyway. Don't settle for a middle, you know, bracket firm if that's what you're looking for, right? Because we're all working on different parts. If you want to be working at Barclays, Goldman Sachs, all these kinds of places, do the work that is required to get there. And sometimes that may be a little more, but also don't be afraid to ask for help and reach out to people. I think for me, it's realizing maybe you won't get Goldman Sachs first, and maybe you'll get a charity job, but maybe that will spark something for you, like Chido said. And it's constantly working towards who you want to be. Who does the person in the future, what kind of skills do they have? Are they compassionate? Do they have communication skills? All this kind of stuff. Whatever opportunities that come along the way that fulfill the criteria of who you are in 5 years, then an opportunity is an opportunity. And if you get it because you're filling a diversity quota, well, guess what? It's still an opportunity. So, and I think that's like a weird, like,
that's a whole topic for another day.
Yeah, that's a whole topic. And I guess that's the beauty of this, where we're starting this to have more conversations.
100%.
So that it's not just you and I's opinion and experience. But it's different people, because there are also people that haven't gotten jobs and they haven't gotten experience and they've done the research and, you know, they've worked on their CV. And I think that's something that we also have to take into account. And I really want us to go into more conversations about that. But if, I guess, as we round off, to someone who has been applying, has been doing the research, has been doing everything that we've been talking about, and they're also struggling with the fact that they're from a BAME background, what advice can you give? Is there any advice you can give? How can we help? And not we as just you and me, but we as in the bigger we. How can we help that kind of person? Yeah.
That's a massive question. I think my initial thoughts on that are don't give up. Don't give up, especially if it's something that you want to do. You know I attended a webinar over the summer, and it had a graduate. I think she'd been working for about 3 years at an organization that I will not name, but it's a big one. And she was just telling us a story of how she applied, she got rejected. She applied again, got rejected. This is for the same program. And she got it, I think, either the second or the third try, and has now been there for 3 years and is now, you know, in a more senior position. I will not say the title, but she's in a more senior position now than she thought she would be. And simply because, one, she never gave up. Two, when she was in the role, she did, you know, other like passion projects, so just assisted in different things that the organization was doing. And, you know, because of that, she was able to then progress to a place where she never even imagined herself to be 3 years later. And so I would definitely say don't give up. Determination is such an important thing to have. Yeah, I'll say that just so that I don't take up too much time. But what would your advice be?
Gosh, I think first of all, I'd probably say, I know it's hard.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge that. And I understand that sometimes you may keep trying and you don't see the end of it. I think I would say don't be afraid to pivot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get so fixated on a specific role and all this kind of stuff, and you don't want to move away from it because we think that not attaining it would be failure. And we think that, you know, moving into something different would be failure. I think don't be afraid to pivot and always be open. There is room for something. And sometimes if there isn't room, create room. While you're in university, find something, create the space, start a society, go to, you know, some careers and be like, I feel like this is a gap. You know, go to the university and say, I feel like this is a gap, and be willing to start something. Be willing to be a pioneer. Be willing to share your experiences, because it's really crazy how when you share your experiences and the journey that you've gone through, you're showing resilience, okay, and by not quitting. So share that experience and don't be embarrassed, and don't feel the need to act as though everything is okay. I know this isn't necessarily practical in terms of do this, do that, but be kind to yourself. Don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to share your experience. Because while you're sharing your experience, someone is hearing that. And while you think you're talking about failure, someone is hearing about their next resilient, hardworking person who will not give up on a dream. So be willing to do that. And yeah, I think that's it. So I guess we're bringing this to a little close.
Thank you so much if you've stuck with us for all this time. Hopefully we get to see you again, and hopefully next time we'll have different people.
Ooh, yes.
All
All right then.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.